I'm at the foot of the Black Mountains just south of Powys, and behind me is Nan Helen, a 500-foot-deep open-cast coal mine. At the bottom of the pit, they found coal mines dating back over 100 years that haven't been seen since the day they closed. That's what I'm going to be exploring this episode, Wales's hidden history of coal.
My name is Will Millard, and I'm a writer and adventurer. Although I've explored some of the world's most inaccessible corners, I'm often surprised about the incredible wonders right here on my doorstep in Wales.
Just look at the immense scale of that.
In this series, I'll be travelling the length and breadth of this country to discover some of these hidden secrets. Lost worlds beneath our feet. Industries that once powered the nation. And structures that will take your breath away. It's going to be exhilarating. And dangerous.
This is as tight as it gets now.
I thought I knew this country, but I was wrong. This is Wales as you've never seen it before. I'm starting my search for Wales's hidden coal history a few miles from Ystrad Gunlais in the South Wales valleys. "400,000 tonnes of coal are being extracted from here every 12 months. The mine is 500 feet deep, about the height of a 40-storey building. This whole place is a little bit like an inverted wedding cake. It's layer upon layer, going deeper and deeper and deeper. And each one of these layers, you know, I mean, they're 100 foot deep, some of them in places. But it's only when you get to the bottom of the pit that you can fully appreciate the reason all of this industry is here.
You can really see the contours of the strata just by looking at that wall. Just waves. I mean, that there is almost like a thumbprint. And you're stepping through hundreds of millions of years until you get to this point where you're 300 million years ago, the Carboniferous period. That is when the coal was formed. It's actually a time when Wales was almost a tropical landscape. Densely forested, there would have been swampland around here, the temperature would have been far, far higher. And the coal itself is the compression of all of that organic matter over that period of time. It's utterly unique. You know, when you're talking about grades of coal, this sits at the very, very top. It burns at an incredible high temperature, which meant that when the Industrial Revolution came along, this stuff fueled the steam revolution.
Coal mining started here on an industrial scale in the 1800s. In the Dillais Valley, there were 7 mines within 7 miles, and by the early 20th century, this area was employing thousands of men. The whole landscape is riddled with underground tunnels. Stephen Griffiths works here today, digging out the bottom of the pit. He's become something of an accidental archaeologist, stumbling across old workings with his excavator.
These are the pit props. This is how it's, has your roof, has your notch. And they sit into the ground then, which is your shaft.
All I have to do is look over there and I can see a long line.
And there it is. There's your shaft going in through there, all the way down.
That doesn't look particularly high.
It doesn't, is it? No.
But that's actually quite a high one, isn't it? Judging by
it
what
is,
you've
yeah.
already told me.
There's some over there, 2 foot high, some of them pit props under there. So they've worked under there, on the belly, on the sides. There's an air shaft door handle. So
if you had a gas leak in one
yeah,
chamber,
you're right
shut
there,
the door.
shut the door.
man.
Yeah.
Someone's life would have been relying on that.
You're right there.
Well, it's heavy, isn't it?
Yeah. Normally you have 12 or 14-year-old child. So all you used to do is make sure the door is shut at all times.
And the rest of their day, they'd probably be in the dark,
Yeah,
I should
they
imagine.
would, yeah. Sitting there with either a candle or whatever.
And that is pretty obvious.
So there's your miner's shovel. It's a miner's pride and joy, these were, because they had to pay for these. They've worked hard, yeah. Absolutely worked hard. That's what we call miners. Dust, water, clawing for coal is unbelievable. Take my hat off to them.
And it's all done by hand, isn't it?
All hand, no machines. It's all shovel and pick. A lot of people forget all that. When I'm unearthing all this, yeah, when I can see how hard they worked.
How does it feel to you to think that you're going to be the last generation of miners working down here now on these seams?
Makes you think. It's an end of an era, as they say, innit?
After the miners' strikes of the 1980s, practically all of the pits closed in Wales. By law, they've all been sealed off. Today, they are completely inaccessible. Apart from some fantastic museums, most of the relics from South Wales's coal history have been demolished, forgotten, or left to rot. But in the South Wales valleys on a hill near Pontypool, ex-miner Clive Davies has saved a little piece of Wales's extraordinary coal past. It's the remains of the engine house and pump room of the Glyn Pits colliery that first opened in the 1840s. I'm hoping it's going to give me a rare glimpse of what it was like to work in a Welsh coal mine nearly 2 centuries ago.
Wow, here we are. So the pump house then, Clive.
Yes.
What am I looking at then?
Well, you're looking at the big part there, you're looking at the cylinder. There.
Right.
It's 30-inch in diameter, and it's got about a 6 feet stroke going up and down. Now, down below, we can see a tank.
Yeah.
It's called a condenser, invented by James Watt in 1769.
1769, so
Yes.
that's really early technology then.
Yes, indeed it is.
The boiler at the bottom generated steam to drive the mechanism at the top, powering giant wooden beams that raised and lowered the mine shaft cages. There were 2 shafts between the buildings that went down a dizzying 600 foot. That's twice the height of Cardiff's Principality Stadium. They're sealed up now, but you've got to imagine beneath where we're walking is a vast network of coal mining tunnels. These shafts were the means to enter them. Opposite the beam engine house is an even bigger building that was built in the 1840s.
Wow, Clive, there's a lot of stuff in here. Look at this place. You've got all of this ironmongery above my head. There's waterfalls of grease coming down, bit of a lever here, big bricked up windows. It's an extraordinary place, Clive.
This is called the entablature, this part here.
It's got a kind of Renaissance look to it, hasn't it? I mean, it's so Victorian, it's such an unnecessary flourish.
This place was built to house 2 giant iron wheels, which were driven by a huge steam engine.
Those wheels are absolutely extraordinary. I've not actually seen anything like it, to be fair. They're huge. Do you know how big they are?
That's 17 feet in diameter.
Right. And what about this cabling that's coming down?
Yes, the flat ropes are braided iron.
Braided iron, goodness me. How did it all work then?
With the 2 winding wheels, as the one was winding on, the other one was winding off. So that means one cage is coming up and the other one is going down.
I see, so it was almost, you know, like a counterbalance.
That's right.
Going
that's
up
right.
and down.
Yeah.
Wow, that's pretty amazing.
This antique technology that powered these giant wheels is looking really unstable. But Clive tells me there's even more to see on the next floor down, and I want to take a look.
Okay, here we go. Descending into the basement.
Although I am quite worried about those 17-foot iron wheels dropping on our heads.
Right then, this is your other set of valves you lock.
Yeah.
And there's your lever up there, look.
Yeah.
Right, it goes up through the...
Oh, that's that lever, so that's the back end of it.
That's it, that's the back end of it.
Got this huge piece of pipe work here, Clive.
Well, where's the bloody boiler then?
I think the boiler's down here, actually, mate. Okay. Yeah, found it.
Can you see it around there?
It's like a massive can, basically,
That's
and there's
right.
big pipe work off the top.
That's right.
It's not in great condition.
No.
The giant boiler was imported from Cornwall and was 27 foot long and 7 foot in diameter, but now it lies buried under tons of collapsed brickwork. Well, mate, I'll be honest, it is a little bit precarious in here, as you said. I reckon we're better off getting out of here. Let's go. Being able to walk around a place like this makes you realise that Wales was a world leader in coal production thanks to the pioneering technology that made mining on a massive scale possible. It's hard to imagine exactly how these engine houses would have worked, but Clive takes me to his house, where he's made something quite remarkable. Oh, wow. No way. With the help of his son, Clive's made a working model of the Glyn Pits colliery. This is incredible. The detail is just extraordinary. You brought the place to life.
I always wanted to show it as it was, and you couldn't show it really in the state that Glyn Pits is because it's very dilapidated, some of it.
The detail is just extraordinary. You've got the pit ponies. There's a coal seam back there. There's a guy in there working away, drams coming round. It's just amazing. It's so realistic. Does it work?
It does indeed.
Do you want to fire it up?
Okay.
No way. Clive, this is amazing, mate. There he goes, down the bottom of the shaft. You don't build something like this unless you've got a deep love for those pits, right?
Well, yes, of course. I mean, that's our heritage is. That's where we all came from. And suddenly overnight, it all disappeared. Bang, 1988, gone. Nothing around here then. And the amount of miners, you know, that work in places like this, graft, camaraderie, first class. For
Clive, this is more than just a model. It's a tribute. In 1890, there was a terrible disaster at the mine. An explosion caused a fire to rip through the underground workings with fatal consequences.
It's virtually a grave because there's still 5 miners and 9 horses down in there to this very day. They never got them out. They had to transfer some of the men from this pit along to the Lanark, which is within just a couple of miles away. And about 10 or 12 days later or something like that, they had a massive explosion there, which killed 176 men and boys. Some of those men were from here, so their numbers was called twice.
The human cost of the coal industry in the South Wales valleys was devastating. But if we remember what we have left, then we can honour the people that lost their lives. As time slips by, the pit wheels have disappeared from the horizon and the spoil tips become more overgrown. Places that were once integral to the valley's coal communities are disappearing more and more. A few miles away in Hengoed in the Rumney Valley is what's left of the Penaththa colliery. It opened in 1906 and was considered one of the high-tech super pits of its day. The pit wheels and this engine hall are all that remains, but inside it's a spectacular sight. This building is absolutely jaw-dropping.
Just think about what this place would have looked like when it was in full flow. Some historians believe this was one of the most important collieries in the whole of South Wales. In 1930, 3,000 men pulled 1 million tonnes of coal out of the ground here. 1 million tonnes. Can you even get your head around that scale? And this place just screams ambition. I mean, look at it. It's extraordinary.
There are dozens of empty pits where giant machinery would have once sat. A colossal crane remains in place high up in the ceiling. But there are also grand arches and Art Nouveau style tiling, strangely at odds with its industrial purpose.
Thousands of men worked so hard to produce this black gold, to turn out the coal and make so much money. And this is what's left. The last physical reminders of an industry that once defined Wales.
The ghosts of Wales's coal past don't just haunt the valleys. They can be found all around Cardiff too. Look hard enough and you'll spot grand buildings all over the city, all built from coal money. Cardiff's coal story has been well documented, but the struggles of the ships that exported the coal are not so well known. In the 19th century, the city was the world's leading exporter of black gold, making the Bristol Channel one of the busiest shipping lanes on the planet. But it's a treacherous stretch of water. Former RNLI boat skipper Ross Martin is going to show me the dangers that coal ships leaving Cardiff would have faced.
We're actually only metres away from a sandbank at this moment in time.
Really?
And directly out in front of us, a mile away, when the tide is out on a big tide, there's an expanse of sand that's probably 2 miles deep wide by about 3 to 4 miles long. And this is why vessels, even to this day, get into difficulties.
As we leave Cardiff behind, you soon see the incredible power of the tide as it rushes over those sandbanks, and today the weather is calm. Ross gets us to slow down as we approach the location of where a coal ship sank.
The Benaglow, she was on a maiden voyage actually. She left Penarth loaded with coal and she was heading to Singapore. I think she had 1,500 tonnes of coal on board, and she never got out of the Bristol Channel. She struck the sandbanks and ended up just here on Cumnash Beach. There was only one loss of life because local people had come down and seen it, and they got the rest of the crew off and they survived. But she was on her way to Singapore and she only ended up 15 miles from Penarth.
What's it like here when it's really bad conditions?
Horrendous, absolutely horrendous. There'll be waves coming past here, 50, 60 foot high, with equal sized troughs behind them. Unless you're in a large vessel, you would be pulverised. And this is why so many vessels, you know, our coal carrying vessels, so many of them foundered in the Bristol Channel.
The sandbanks are hazardous enough, but Ross is taking me to an even more threatening location. It's an island called Tusker Rock, named after a Viking who terrorised the Vale of Glamorgan. A fitting name for a reef that's been doing the same to ships for centuries.
Straight away, you can see wreckage. It's strewn everywhere on this side of the island, isn't it?
Yes, yes.
This is it. This is Tusker Rock. This is the peak of low tide now, isn't it?
Well, this is the highest part of the rock as well.
Ross knows this place well, which is good news, because this stretch of water has the second fastest rising tide in the world.
We haven't got long. This is now the lowest point of low tide, but in an hour, this will all be covered in water. And a few more hours, there'll be about 21 feet of water above my head. But already you can see wreckage everywhere. It's strewn around. It's become part of the rock itself. There's barnacles growing on it. And look at this. What is this?
This was from 1967. The sand dredger, the steep home.
67, so it's quite a late one then, really.
Quite a late one. She was actually one of the last ships ever built in Bristol. And this is the engine block, which is lying on its side. That would have been vertical. And there's the ship's propeller.
The ship's propeller just there, sticking out.
She was a steamship.
Is that the boiler over there?
That's the boiler over there.
This ship has been decimated, and it makes me think of what would have happened to the wooden ships of the 1800s. Back then, this shipping lane exploded in traffic, and it's from this period most of the wrecks on the island are recorded. There are pieces of broken ships scattered all over the rocks. The most impressive remains are from 1882, a French ship carrying iron ore called the SS Liban.
Well, we're stood on where the engine would have sat. And if you look in that direction, that would have been the rudder post. And you can see that's where the propeller would have been mounted.
When you stand here, it's almost like a rib cage. You can really see the whole shape of this boat all the way down to the prow.
But it was the ships exporting coal that had it the worst. There were thousands of them leaving Cardiff and Barry at the height of the industry, and this rock is thought to have claimed hundreds of victims. It was a coal steamer that met one of the most gruesome fates.
The Millard came up on you on the 15th of October, 1886. She was an iron ship and she was carrying 1,000 tonne of coal. She'd left Cardiff and she was on her way to Rio de Janeiro with her cargo. And unknown to anybody, this tail end of a hurricane was coming across the Atlantic, and the vessel was driven back up the Bristol Channel, and she struck this rock and foundered on the rock, drifted off, and she now sits between here and Merthyr Mawr and River Ogmore.
The screams from the sailors could be heard from the shore. All 20 of the crew perished, with some of the bodies washing up on a nearby beach. The captain's young daughter was found dead in the arms of one of the drowned seamen.
Do you think more should be done to remember the people whose lives were lost on this rock?
Something should be done because we live in a country today that was forged by those people.
Totally.
If it hadn't been for them, Wales would not be what it is today.
Relics of the South Wales coal industry are scattered right across this landscape, from spoil tips to abandoned buildings, and the valley's communities like this, villages and towns that only exist because of coal. Yet now, some 3 decades after the great industry is wound down and the strikes, the memory of why they are here is beginning to fade.
The Welsh coal story is coming to an end, and the Nant Helen mine in Ystrad Gunlais encapsulates the whole of that story. Some of Wales's very first ventures into coal mining happened here, and now this same site will witness some of its last. But for now, this is what modern coal mining in Wales looks like.
We are hot-fitting it across the open cars because they're about to set off an explosion. Wow, look at this. There is a group of blokes out the front in their boiler suits and they are rigging up live explosives. You can see the wires all trailing out.
Planting the electrical charges into plastic explosives is a delicate process, but it exposes the coal seam in milliseconds. 150 years ago, it would have taken dozens of men several months.
Do you remember the first time you did this?
Yeah.
What was it like?
Shaking like a leaf.
I'll be honest, mate, I do feel a little bit nervous myself. Are you going to let me press down the plunger, is it, later?
Yeah,
flick
like in the
switch?
Westerns, you know, like in the Westerns, big plunger.
Yeah? Right, we're just backing off now. We're going to get to the 100 metres safe zone because there's 3 tons of explosives in that charge face right now, up to 100 individual bombs. The machines have gone. Leighton's done his final check and he's got the trigger in his hand down here, so he's calling us over. This is it.
Just hold it. Push the button in, smack the top down. That's all. Hit the top. Walk
1,
that way.
2, 3.
Hit it harder.
Whoa!
Oh, I told you you'd be underwhelmed.
Underwhelmed? Mate, the earth moves. What are you talking about, underwhelmed?
When you've done about 15,000 of them, you get a bit underwhelmed, don't you?
Wow. Was that a good one?
Yeah, it's pretty good. It's got a good lift on it, so
Yeah?
it's moved a lot. See the difference in height now from where it was to...
Yeah, totally.
Stay here now.
Right you are, mate. That was awesome. I don't want to say it in front of Leighton, but I think I bruised the palm of my hand then. Some of the blocks that is shifted, absolutely enormous, and they were lifted up into the air as if it was nothing.
Compared to the Victorian era, this is a much more efficient way of extracting coal, a process that enables this place to produce 400,000 tonnes a year. But with climate change one of the biggest problems the world faces today, Nant Helen will soon shut for good. This whole area will then be regenerated and landscaped. It will be like the mine was never there. It's already happened with a previous section.
If you look over the area, you can see, it doesn't bear a resemblance to open cast coal site now.
No, not at all.
It's been perfectly restored. You've got the undulations in the landform. You've got a wetlands area, which is a good habitat. So obviously it's been managed well.
There are even plans to build tracks for testing electric trains, providing new green jobs for the people of the South Wales valleys.
Wow, look at that. It's pretty amazing. I bet you the people that first mined in this pit would never have believed it. They would have thought that the coal mine in here would have gone on forever. The fact of the matter is the communities are still here, of course, but coal mining is very much dead and buried.
When this open cast mine closes in March 2021 and the site is filled in, the hills will hide the centuries of graft that once gave this country its economy and identity. The end of Wales's great coal story. Next time, I'll be exploring North Wales's epic industrial story of slate. I'll be looking at how it completely changed the landscape.
Oh my goodness me.
Huge.
Look at the size of that.
How it made untold riches for the privileged few,
More opulence, paintings, marble.
and how what's left is being repurposed for the 21st century.
I'm afraid to tell you this is probably the most dangerous place I've ever taken you, Will.
Right.
Go.
Lead the way.
Right.